Now for my disclaimer. This is informational video only. It's not a DIY or rebuild video, but just to show how they are assembled. All seatbelt repairs should be done by certified companies. I claim no responsibility for how someone might use this information. Okay, first you want to assess the condition of the belts and mechanisms. Closely inspect the belt for fraying. You want to look for any fraying that come along the edges, any nicks or threads that are broken, coming loose. Check from one end to the other. Now these belts are going to be 40 years old, so I would suggest if you can get the webbing, there's places that do sell this. I would have there's several seatbelt companies also. I think there's one down in Juniper, Florida, that they might redo your webbings for you. They might rebuild them. They sell new ones, but it's just depending on what you want to do. A lot of people just want to clean their belts. This one was cleaned. So was this one. This one was, I mean, it was black. It was nasty. I got it the best I could. You can see there's some rust along this edge. That's just an indicator that up in the retractor there's some rust going on, and it's something that should be looked into. But make sure there's no cuts, nicks. Make sure your sewing, your threads are in good shape. And if they are, maybe you just want to clean your belts. You really don't need to take anything apart. If you got a belt like this that looks good, you don't see any rust coming out here, then the most you might want to do is remove the buckle. That way you'll have access to the whole belt. You can clean it, soak it, do whatever. There's many methods. If you got rust on it, there's videos on YouTube that will show you how to take rust out of material. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But just assess the overall condition of, look for damages anywhere in the retractor or the buckle, any cracks in any metal, so forth. The first thing I want to show you is just how to simply remove the buckle from the belt. This is fairly simple. Take you a vise, take you some cardboard, protect the tongue here. Then you're going to put it in here with the top facing away from you. Just clamp it in there. Take it just a flat screwdriver, stick it down in the corner, and hit that corner, hit that corner. Then you've got the cover off. You lift this up, pull the bar out, boom, it's off. Okay, to get into your retractor, it's got this little sheet metal cover here. It's got a pop rivet right there. You just take your drill press, come down on the back of the rivet, and just come down till it pops the head off. Once it pops the head off, just take your... Alright, after you drill the back of it out, you can just pry the rivet out there. There's a little tab right here that locks in. Just pull that up out of the lathe. Then your cover just comes off. You can start inspecting some of your parts. My cover had some rust in here, so I taped it off, I sandblasted it, and I sprayed it with the rust reformer, which Rust-Oleum rust reformer. You should buy this stuff by the case. This stuff is amazing. So always spray anything that's been rusted or even just bare metal with rust reformer. You can sit it outside for 10 years and it will not rust. Look for pitting. This had some pitting in it, so I just put some phosphorus acid on the rust and converted it to oxide. Then I just tried to clean it up. You take this, you take a Scotch pad, and get it soapy, you take your Scotch pad and you brush it back and forth in nice vertical strokes, and you give it, you clean up the finish and give it another brushed nickel looking finish. Check for any rust. If you have any rust, get rid of it. This thing was rusted. I mean, it was solid rust. That's why you'll see my seat belt had the rust stain right across there, and I did my best to get it out, but that was the best I could do. It was really bad. But I used the rust reformer on here, so I don't have to worry about that rusting anymore, and it will not, it will not rub off on your material. So try not to use paint. Just use that and leave it alone. Now start looking at your retractor. Make sure none of the plastic is cracked. Make sure everything looks like it's in good shape. Look for any kind of rust, any kind of damage. Check the belt again, like I said, for fraying. Now, one thing you want to, you got this cover off. Now this is your spring. Do not remove that unless you've got this wound all the way as far as you can go. You wind that belt all the way up. Then this cap just has some tabs and it'll just pop right off. So you got to be careful. Take a little screwdriver and just pry it up, but don't let it come away from here, because that spring will explode on you. Now that happens to you, don't think all is, there's the spring. Don't think that all is lost. This spring, I had this thing all the way unwound, so that spring was wound to tight, and I took that cover off and this thing exploded and turned into a big knotty mess. So I untangled it, and you still had kind of a mess, but it's very simple. It goes back in very easily. It took me about a minute to get that spring wound in there. Now you notice you got a green side, a green unit. All the parts on here are green, including the spool. So green is passenger side, orange is driver side. So the spool, everything is color coded, the spool, the weight, and all the parts. So you'll know the difference from passenger and drivers. You guys also remember that they're mirror images of each other. So the passenger side and the driver side are opposite as far as the construction. So every piece, the brackets, everything is a left and a right. On removing the spring, get your belt wound up in here as much as you can, and slowly, there's a tab here, here, and a tab under there. So you get your little screwdriver and slowly lift these tabs out, hanging on to this so it doesn't unwind on you. Just pop it up. Now what you're going to do is you can feel it which way it's wanting to turn, so just slowly let it unwind itself. Just keep it low, keep it tight to the metal, and you just let it go. Keep unwinding. These tabs will keep trying to grab on anything, so just unwind it. It's usually about 5 winds, and that's what I recommend, winding it. Probably 6 times I would wind this with the belt all the way rolled up in here. When you put it back on, you'll there, and when you get it, just lift it off. You're good to go. You'll have this piece of plastic here. So you got both sides off, and that's how you get your spring off. So now, if you hold this down here, you can go ahead and unwind the belt. Just spin it off. And that's what it looks like inside. Now, the way I got this mounted is the webbing goes down in here, goes down around the bottom of this and comes back up, and it's got a lip sewed in it. It's flapped over, and there's a small little metal rod in here. That's what keeps the belt in the spool. Be a good idea to take a lot of photos. Make sure you keep an eye on how everything is oriented, which way this winds in here. You know how these pieces, there's two pieces, this piece and this piece are two separate pieces. So what happens is if this weight moves in any direction, it's going to lift this, which is going to lock, which is going to make this metal piece turn and lock on these geared teeth. And it's going to keep it from retracting. The only time it'll retract is when this is level and sitting flat and lets this drop. Then it'll unwind. So to take this apart, all you do is pop off this little C-clip right there, and then you can remove this rod. Then you can remove this rod, just kind of tap it and pull that rod out, and there's your belt and your spindle. Now you can see in here where the belt goes in and around, and then this rod actually goes through the belt. Might be better if you pry. Actually, it looks like I can pry this bar up like this. You can actually go inside here as well and push it out. Yeah, remember that material is folded over twice around this rod. There you go. Okay, so you got the big opening down in there, and as you can see, they flapped over an inch of material and sewed it, and there's just a little metal rod that's in there. And this is probably as far as you're going to get this. If you remove this plastic, it might flex enough to squeeze this out of there, but it's pretty tight. But if you've got this much of the belt hanging out that you can have complete access to, that's all you need as far as cleaning the belt. Now it'd be nice if I knew someone I could send this to and say, okay, take my bracket and duplicate this webbing and replace this webbing, with my original bracket in this and send it back to me. That would be wonderful. The belt seems to be, it's not dry, it's not rotted, it's not fraying anywhere, it's nice and supple. I believe it's okay, especially as much as people drive these cars anyway. But it'd be nice if I could find somebody that would actually duplicate this exact webbing. Looks like it's a 4-panel webbing with the red stitching. I'm working on recreating these labels, so hopefully that'll happen soon. I've ordered the material. This is Tyvek, which like a painter suit. DuPont created this back in 1955, so looks like GM found a use for it. Now if you want to take this apart just for grins and giggles, this bar here will just slide right out the side. Then when you get that out, you'll take this little piece right out to the inside, and to remove this piece, you just pull this. You can see it's got a dimple there. You pull this back, and it's got 2 tabs right here that when you pull it back this way, it just pops right out. So you can completely disassemble it. You can get a lot closer look at your pieces to make sure that they're not cracked, rotted, because every piece of this is very important to your seatbelt. So you don't want. Now this one had started to do a little bit of rust, so I did sandblast the inside and painted it with my rust reformer. just so it wouldn't continue to rust. But other than that, this one's in great shape. The other side, it was shot. This spool was rusted everywhere but Sunday. You know, it's even a little bit pitted, but it's not compromised. So I sandblasted it completely, along with, you know, the rod was rusted. I sandblasted and prepped the rod. It's critical that you have all the parts and that you make sure that they all go back into the seatbelt. Right. So first off, we can go ahead and we can set the weight back in here, put tabs in there and push forward, and it'll clip in here. Then you're going to feed this piece back in. Whoop. Like so. Line those holes up. Then you're going to take the latching rod. You're going to set that in that hole, like so. Get it flush on this side. Then you're going to take a little dab of grease. You got this bushing that goes on the opposite side of the weight mechanism. You want to put a little grease in there, and you want to put a little grease on the outside. That way it'll hold itself in there. Set it on the inside, like so. Then you have to take the green gear is going to go on the same side as this, so this is going to go back this way because you want the spool is going to sit here and it unwinds this way, so you want it to go in and back around. First thing you got to do, stick your rod back in there. Let's fold that up. Actually, I go like more like this. Get some of that back webbing in there. Stick that down in there. Take your pin, just shove it through there. That way you can wiggle it, try to pull this out and get this pushed back so you get it nice and tight, just like that. You can take your pin out. Your pin's going to go on this side. You got a flat areas on the shank right there that lock it in. Now you want to make sure you have the orientation right. Just make sure the green gear, or the red, depending on which one you're using, is over here on the weight side as well. Make sure your bushing stays in place. You set it down in there, and then you insert your rod. I forgot to mention, you might want to add a little bit of grease inside this hole back here as well. Now you want to turn your rod until the flats line up and go into the spool. There you go. And you push the rod on through. When you put your C-clip on, make sure it snaps on really good. If it doesn't, take it off and use your pliers and close it up a little bit. You know, use the weight of the belt or whatever, and you want to roll it. Get it rolled all the way up as far as you can onto the roller so we can put the spring on. I'm letting the weight of the belt sit down so it holds it nice and tight. You can actually, the belt sticks out on the back, you can actually use your finger on both sides. All right, get that belt wound up as far as you possibly can. All the way up to that plate. Now we can put the spring on. So you got this plastic shield. You want to put it on first. You got your 3 dots, which will go here. So get your, get your middle of your spring in that slot on the shaft. There. Once you do that, your belt rolls around this way. Okay, so you're going to want to turn your spring in the same direction as the belt is rolled up. So you want to turn this green one to the left. You want to turn it 6 turns. That's 1. Every time this tab comes around to this dot, that'll be another turn. So there's 2. And you got to keep it close, centered, and close as you can so the spring doesn't go crazy on you. These little tabs are going to catch the edges, so just take your time. There's 3. There's 4. There's 5. Now this, hold it down too, because that thing's trying to just take off on me. There's 5. I'll keep it down one more time. Centered, low. Then you just pop those tabs in. There, you got your spring. Alright. Alright, now your sheet metal fits in those tabs there. There's a little latch here, pops in. Then what you're going to do, get your pop rivet, put it in from the rear, and you might want to take your pliers and actually make sure you close that lid up nice and tight so that pop rivet catches it. Get a hold of it so you can push it nice and flat. Take your rivet gun, go ahead and just snap that rivet on there. There you go. Everything's back together. Everything laying flat. You're going to set your buckle right here in this direction, just like so, facing the mount. Put your metal rod in there. Set it back down in the buckle. Your cover has an angled end and a square end, so you can see you just got to match it up. The square will go to the back, and then it'll go to the front. You can almost push it on by hand, but I use a press. So I've got my press here. I'm going to take a piece of cardboard under the buckle. I'm going to stick a piece of cardboard on top of the buckle. I'm going to bring my press down. Stick the buckle up underneath. Pop. There. Okay. That's what your seat belt should look like when it's completely redone. Your mounting tab, it'll angle up this way so it holds it away from the body once it's mounted. There you go. Okay, that's it. Then you got your seat belt all ready to put back in the car. Was able to make these replacement seat belt tags. If anybody's interested, they can just get a hold of me. And there you go.